Yes, they are very similar. And I mean, in some ways, they were both tamed by the discipline of the armed services, but the same things that, weak men with much stronger wives, and a strong sense of entitlement, not too bright. So yeah, no, I think there are. That's the problem. There are these rogue royals, and it's a sort of trope of the crown, between that division between public duty and private pleasure or profit. And there were those like Harry and Andrew and Duke of Windsor and Princess Margaret who fall into one category, and then others who fall into the other one.
Hi, all. Kinsey Schofield here. Welcome to Crown and Conflict, a series dedicated to dissecting the most riveting royal scandals in history. Currently rocking the monarchy still is the updated paperback edition of Andrew Lownie's entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York. Congratulations, Andrew, on all of the success of this book. And can I tell you, I don't know how many other people have told you this, but I actually, sometimes when you get the updated version, you skip and you just try to figure out what's new. And I've enjoyed reading this from the very beginning
Oh, thank you.
because the last time this book came out, um, there was not an arrest, and there's been so many new developments that reading it, knowing what I know now, has made the experience even more fun.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Well, I mean, it's fascinating to see, how many of the stories are confirmed by the Epstein releases.
Mm.
You've got through chapter and verse there, detail. I mean, I interviewed people, but they've got the actual emails. So that was fascinating and gratifying to feel that the sources were good.
Well, yeah, I ask about that, or I'd sent you some questions about that. Can you give me an example where you saw that come to fruition in the Epstein files, where you're like, chapter three, I told you so?
Well, I mean, the publishers maybe take out all the Peter Mandelson material, and
Wow.
so because they didn't believe it. So, I mean, there was an awful lot of stuff like that.
How
So,
I bet they felt pretty silly.
well, I mean, I didn't put it back in because the stories come out. But yeah, absolutely. A lot of these stories of forwarding emails of insider information, all that stuff was there. And even, they made a big play of the fight that he had with Tony Johnson Burt, who the Queen, the head of the Queen's household. That was all there.
Mm.
But people forget. But yeah, no, it was fascinating for me to see this stuff and also, people denying things when the book came out. Everyone said that the Queen wasn't, didn't protect Andrew, and now, of course, the palace's line is that the Queen sort of protected Andrew, and she's having to take the blame rather than the king.
That is interesting. And I am one of those people that when the book initially came out was singing from the rooftops, this is an inherited problem.
Yes, yes, no, you were very good like that.
Oh, thank you. So you do believe that this was an inherited problem, and this is not the king throwing the queen under the bus unfairly. You have seen the evidence to say to you that the previous
Absolutely.
the
I
previous
mean,
monarch protected Andrew.
absolutely. I mean, it's very clear. I mean, she was running the show, and the countless stories of denials, legal threats made to journalists. I mean, the Amy Robach thing, where she wanted to run the story, and pressure was put on ABC not to, by the palace withdrawing access to members of the royal family. All that
And
happened clearly
William
under the
William and
Queen.
Catherine's wedding. I mean, that is a lot. That's a
Yeah,
huge threat. You will not have access to anything on this global stage at this moment where every major news entity will be present. We will cut you off. That, I mean, Amy Robach says that herself. I
yeah,
don't think she realizes she's being recorded, or she realized it would ever be distributed, but she's saying to her coworkers, I had Epstein stuff years ago, and the reason
absolutely.
I wasn't able to publish it was because we were not going to have access to William and Catherine, and William and Catherine wouldn't have had anything to do with that, correct?
No,
That's not
absolutely
on them.
not. No, absolutely not. It was just one of the threats. But I also had an MI6 contact who took a story to the Queen's private secretary about a $5 million in a suitcase that had been given to Andrew as a bribe in Kazakhstan, and he was sent away with a flea. In fact, two of them went, a flea in their ear. So No, I mean the Queen was protecting him and didn't want to know. I mean that was the
Mm.
problem. People gave up bringing things to her because there was no point. And Andrew, she repeatedly would go to her and complain about people, and they would be in trouble for trying to do their job.
Yeah.
So, but I think Charles does feel, he had she passed the buck. She didn't deal with the problem, and Charles seems to be doing the same now with William. He's not addressing the problem, because this is would be a good opportunity to clean out the stables, start with a clean slate when William comes to power. He's not associated with this in any way, but they're not doing that. They're just hoping the problem's going to go away.
I know the answer to this, but I thought it would be fun to bring it up for the audience because you explained this in the Channel 7 spotlight piece that we were in together. New sources. Have new sources come forward after the book was published because they saw the public reaction, they felt safer, they felt like there was something that needed to be on your radar.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think people wanted to say something publicly, but didn't know how to say, where to go. So, I mean, that was one thing. I think a lot of people felt more confident when they saw the number of named sources in the original book that they might go public themselves. I think people were shocked by the way he behaved and actually what's been uncovered, Virginia Giuffre's book. So I had dozens, I had 200,000 words of new material to kind of fit into these last 40 pages. So I've got lots of material I haven't used, which I will sort of put on Substack or use in some way.
That's what we
Um,
call a deep tease in the industry. I got more, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to have to subscribe to my Substack.
exactly. Or I'll give some of it to you. They
Thanks.
only watch you. So, but yeah, amazing. I mean, and these were protection officers, former members of staff. I mean, one of the interviews in the update is with a long-term member of staff. There were school friends, diplomats. Lots of people came forward that I never expected and even knew about. And I then did contact a number of people who'd said no the first time, and some agreed, some still are holding out.
Wow.
But yeah, the whole thing has changed. I feel the press is much more emboldened. Um, it's very difficult to argue with the sort of material in the Epstein releases. It's all there, very clearly laid out. And I think what's fascinating is we've now got the news today that Surrey police are investigating some historic allegations of abuse. I mean, again, this was stuff that was in the Epstein releases. I never thought the police would do anything on Andrew, but it looks like they are taking this seriously, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the evolution of, that horrific BBC interview where I don't know if any of us believed anything he was saying, to him being arrested and, these different investigations popping up. I mean, I've heard you say you don't know if he'll ever actually serve any time for any of these accusations, but do you feel like the pressure of all of this negative attention, the loss of the home, his ego driven home that he loved, exile. Do you think he's sitting back going, is this is punishment enough?
Yeah, it's difficult to know what's going through his mind. I mean, I did have a source close to him who said that he still feels very hard done by. He doesn't have any remorse. He is actually quite cocky. He doesn't think he will be charged. And I can see a scenario we're being prepared for. He wasn't a paid official. He can't be tried under malfeasance in public life. He's not going to get a fair trial. Dangerous if he gives evidence, he will call as witnesses his brother, and the last thing the king can do is appear in his own court. He's got all sorts of scandals he can threaten to reveal. He'll say that, you guys knew about this. Why am I taking the rap? I think, but this is why the Surrey thing is so interesting because, he may not go down for the financial crimes. He may actually go down for the sexual trafficking. It's the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown has just done two very important interventions with an investigative journalist showing that there was no proper investigation of the flights coming in to, I think, about 9 different airports with trafficked women. And if, some of these women are found, if they're prepared to give testimony, I think that actually may be the what brings them down. But the
Unreal.
idea, of the son of a monarch and brother of a monarch going to British prison is extraordinary. But you're absolutely right. I don't see him spending the rest of his life looking out of the window in Sandringham. But it's difficult to know what the other alternatives are. I mean, they can't be seen to let him escape to Abu Dhabi. He has to. I think people feel he needs to be held to account and punished. Um, so it's we just don't know. And I mean, what's his state of mind? Well, he must be wondering, what the future holds, whether this investigation will take years, as I suspected, and it'll be kicked into touch, and it may be a new reign before anything happens, or if something might happen literally tomorrow. So some really, I think it must be a tense moment for him. And he does say in this interview with the person close to him that, he does feel his life has been completely upended.
Mm.
And, his family is fractured. His daughter wouldn't even tell him directly that she was going to have a baby. Um, it's a pretty bleak life. His parents live for another 30 years. So what's he going to do for the rest of his life?
Right. And then there was the incident on the estate where somebody, it sounds like this person had some potentially some mental health issues, but somebody kind of accosted him while he was on the estate. So he must kind of not even feel like he's safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is a police protection officer. I mean, clearly it was I think a pretty low level incident. They got in the car quite quickly and disappeared. But one could speculate all sorts of scenarios, a bit like Princess Anne's kidnap, where, there were various cars that came and stopped her front and behind. And does he need more security? And if he does, who's going to pay for it? I don't
Yeah.
think the taxpayer can. Will Charles just stump up, or does Andrew actually have more money than he claims? And that, that he'll have to pay for his own security. But you're absolutely right. It's driving him increasingly to just sit in a darkened room and watch videos.
Ugh. And play video games, right? Is he a gamer?
He's a gamer. Call of Duty. He loves landing planes, simulation machines that will, you can practice all that. But it's a pretty lonely existence. There's no evidence of any people coming to see him. I mean, presumably he's talking to his lawyers, but his family seem to have abandoned him, and he doesn't seem to have many friends. It looks pretty bleak, and one has to feel some sympathy for him, though he's brought it on himself. And of course, Sarah Ferguson, what is her future? She's still in hiding somewhere, possibly in Portugal. She has no way of making any money in the future. I mean, she's lived off basically her royal status. And though a few friends remain, I suspect their patience may be waning. And as more and more disclosures come out about a pretty sleazy life, and the hypocrisy of her life, here she was as a champion of women who've been sex trafficked, taking, actually and consorting with known sexual predators. Says she's a great mother, but takes 16-year-old girls to P. Diddy yacht parties.
Yeah.
Um, not, I would have said, a good look.
Well, one of the big revelations from your book that stopped us all, I was in Charleston when I saw this headline that Diddy and Sarah Ferguson might have had a sexual relationship. And I was like, I need to sit down. I cannot process this information. That has to be one of the biggest new revelations from your book. What stopped you from revealing it in the first place? Or I actually think the source came out later. Correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong,
it did.
after the book.
It
Yeah.
did.
And were you as shocked? Did you hesitate at all when it came to this story? Because, you know, it's so far fetched until you break down the characters and you've got this entrepreneur, this rapper who is obsessed with royalty and is trying to emulate it, and you've got this former royal who's obsessed with celebrity and celebrity men and uses them to elevate herself. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe this does make sense.
Yes, no, your reading's absolutely right. She's always loved rappers. I mean, she actually had rappers perform at the children's sort of birthday parties, and she's always had a thing. She had a thing for Tiger Woods, chased him across America. Yeah, it actually does make sense. And when you see the number of times that they met, I mean, I hadn't realized that she was at his birthday in 1998. I thought they actually met 4 years later. So it's a long, long relationship. Or friendship, shall we say. But yeah, it does all make sense. Why I was a bit nervous because I thought people are just going to say this is more salacious gossip, and the focus should be on the financial stuff, which is sort of, what I'd hoped for. But I knew it would get attention,
But
and
also you just mentioned she's a hypocrite that hangs out with sexual predators. And now we know years later that convicted in a court of law and plenty of evidence, Sean Diddy Combs is a sexual predator according to the courts. And
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that it makes a lot of sense regarding what you just said about the hypocrisy
Well,
of this person.
exactly. I mean, if you write a biography, you've got to tell the full story, and it is revealing about character. And I think the other thing is, I mean, she had a whole history of taking her children to meet sexual predators. I mean, she took the two daughters when they were quite young to meet Peter Nygard in the Bahamas. And I mean, he's another one, very, very sort of dodgy character. I mean, she went off to see Epstein clearly as soon as he came out of prison. And there's a whole series of these people. And when you're presenting yourself as a champion of traffic women and run charities for them, it's a kind of inconsistency here. But yeah, it was a member of staff who kind of just raised this, and actually I've now gone back to other members of staff that I talked to see if they can shed more light on it. It hadn't been raised when I talked to them before, and then of course the people from P Diddy's own um, entourage who began to talk about it. So it's interesting that P Diddy has first of all said there were lies, and then now he's kind of backed off that. He's just saying it's gossip, doesn't say it's not true.
Oh, well, I had made the point when he initially made that statement that he is under the impression that he could get early release. So of course you're going to try to distance yourself from somebody so heavily tied with Jeffrey Epstein when a sexual predator, a true villain, when you're desperate to get out of the jail early, of course you're going to try to create that distance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, all the way through, I mean, I'm afraid I've had to sort of examine anything Sarah Ferguson said just to see if it was true. I mean, we saw, as you said in the Newsnight interview, just how Andrew lies about things he doesn't need to lie about. And it's the same with her. And I'm just, used to denials all the time from these people and then showing that, it's actually there is some truth in the stories. But, I'm excited that others seem to be looking into this, other journalists, and there are going to be more disclosures, I'm told, over the weekend.
Well, the countdown is on to get all of the Diddy gossip. Were there any legal concerns or palace pressure surrounding this new material in the paperback edition? Or do you think the palace has pivoted to never complain, never explain with you because there's so much hype around everything you say now?
Yes, I mean, I think that, there is never complain, never explain strategy at the moment. I mean, not to give it, I suppose, any oxygen. I mean, there was a time when the hardback came out that the word had gone out that was nothing new in the book. It wasn't worth reviewing it. That was the line given to the journalists. I'm told I went actually, I was in Zurich on Monday, seeing one of my sources, who's close to the royal family, and I was told that they're actually quite pleased with the book. That they quite liked seeing the fact that Andrew's in trouble, though clearly that he's kind of dragging others down with him. So I've always been
It's got
slightly
Andrew, it has to be exhausting to protect somebody you don't like for so long,
exactly, exactly.
you know?
Uh, you know, and I think it happened with the Duke of Windsor, the cover up over the Marburg papers, same
Prince
sort of thing.
Harry.
Prince Harry, exactly. In some ways, I think a lot of people do want to clean out the stables and feel that,
Mhm.
they need to bite the bullet, and then they can start with a clean, as I say, a clean slate, and it'll be wonderful, and you won't have these stories coming. And that's sort of what reputation management does. You try to get ahead of the story and kind of kill it off, and hopefully then it's fine. And maybe they're coming round to that view. Who knows?
Yeah. When I talked to you last, we talked about freedom of information files and paperwork you had been fighting for years. Any updates on that?
No, I'm afraid nothing has changed. I mean, I continue to get rebuffed. I mean, there are only simple questions on, travel and accommodation, and these have been denied on grounds of national security and health and safety and all sorts of things. And I mean, the government did say they would open these files. They would reveal who was traveling with him, what business he was doing, because it's now very clear that he had various people like Epstein and David Stern and David Rhodes doing their own business, and a businessman called David Tang who played off a lot of Fergie's debts. But also, I've been getting parliamentarians to ask questions, and they're getting the runaround as well. So, again, in public, the government is saying that they are going to be cooperative and they want openness, but actually, behind the scenes, nothing has changed, and that's true of the palace as well. I've seen letters to protection officers reminding them of their obligations of confidentiality, and I've seen letters to people in the UKTI reminding them about their pensions, for example. So, this is all performative. It's window dressing.
Oh, that doesn't that frustrate you? Because it did seem like there was a huge pile on, and then it got suspiciously quiet.
Yes, yes. I think all we can do is, hope that maybe through the courts, with Parliament, and with lots of journalists and writers and citizen journalists and substackers and podcasts, that there is sufficient pressure to push something. I mean, I think one of the reasons that the king did finally act at the end of October was that he was being heckled, and MPs were also getting the constituents were writing into the MPs saying something needed to be done. There needed to be a parliamentary debate, and we did have a debate on Andrew, and that was it. There's still no parliamentary accountability of the royals, particularly on their finances.
Mm,
And so there's still a long way to go before I think they're out of the woods and trust is restored.
I agree with you. Has anything happened when you, well, I mean, have you been threatened? I know that you were kind of worried for your own safety before this book dropped. Have you had to increase your own personal security or changed your own lifestyle because you went up against a major institution and some pretty intimidating people?
Yeah, no, I have had to make changes in the way I live,
I'm
but
sorry. I'm sorry. I really am sorry.
yeah, but no, no, I mean, in some ways, that's a compliment that people feel that. I mean, I think the most important thing is to keep speaking out, and the more of us who speak out, the better. But I think, what I'm more worried about is things like libel, that you can be just caught financially by saying something perhaps being caught. I mean, I have a podcast. We've just done an interview with someone who's talking about the pushback there was against Virginia Giuffre. And, would the Maxwell family, who've been financing, for example, some of these people, would they have the finances to really bring a big legal case and kind of not win it, but tie you up and
Mm,
cost you money. So that's one consideration. And I think the other is that people feed you false information and then you are undermined when it's shown that it's not correct. So
right.
I've always been slightly suspicious of, people who are too close to the story coming forward and volunteering information because you're always worried you're going to be set up.
That's very intriguing. Yeah. Just give us those names so we can block their email and phone number as well, okay? Were there any revelations you deliberately held back from the first edition that made the second edition?
Yeah, there were things. I mean, I knew that Fergie had stayed in contact with Epstein much longer because there was a dog walker who I could only identify as Coco P. It was a comment at the end of a podcast. And she had seen her staying at Epstein's properties about 4 years after she publicly cut off. And actually, we then put a call out on that podcast for Coco P to identify herself, and she did come forward, but only after the hardback came out. So that story by a woman called Claudine Pabst has now been included. Um, yeah, there were other stories where we didn't have enough sources to back, let's say, one source on something. And so we held back, and then other sources have come forward, and I've been able to put a little bit more in. But the problem is, if you're adding material at the end of the book and you've only got 40 pages, you've got to tell the story, bring it up to date, you've got all the Epstein, millions of words from the Epstein releases that you've got to kind of cover. And then slipping in the new stuff is quite tricky because I had more stuff about his bad behavior at school and in the Navy, but it's more of the same. And so it's trying to find fresh takes. But we got an awful lot of stories about his very predatory sexual behavior, this sort of sense of droit de seigneur that he could treat women exactly as he wanted. And I thought, felt that was important to get in there because that we hadn't perhaps had a full sense of that earlier in the book.
I didn't prep you for this question, so I apologize, but I have very little sympathy for his daughters. Like Eugenie announcing her pregnancy and everybody like, oh, there's a new royal baby on the way. It felt like an attempt to distract. If Epstein files are slowly dropping from the sky, I'm not finding time to procreate. I don't know about you. I'm pretty depressed and upset. I have very little sympathy for these girls who I think know exactly who their parents are
Yes, no,
and
they do.
have financially benefited from their parents' lack of morals and values. Do you have a take on that? Am I too harsh?
No, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's very shrewd. And I think, there's still a huge PR campaign to present them as innocent collateral damage when, there are so many cases of money being fenced through their accounts, which they couldn't explain. Their whole business careers are based on basically the contacts that they've been passed by their parents. There's a lot of evidence of them being given gifts, of being paid to appear at particular events, particularly in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
There are now, a lot of investigation going on into the charities. I mean, I think particularly the Anti-Slavery Collective, which raised large sums of money which were never spent. We had double the amount of money spent on salaries as on grants. And all this is about laundering reputations, enhancing social ambitions, and actually very little to do with charity. And they've all, interestingly enough, been involved, I mean, both the daughters and the parents with sex trafficking charities, which is an odd thing, for them to get involved in, given
Right.
the circumstances. And Andrew had one, he set it up for a year, worked with the body shop, and once it got some publicity, the whole thing shut down. The poor women who were producing stuff for the body shop were kind of forgotten about. So it's a very cynical use of charity. And I think there will be more coming out. There was some stuff I just couldn't put in for legal reasons, but they're certainly in my sights, and I suspect others as well. And I think if they were wise, they would give up their titles. They would perhaps give up the subsidized accommodation they have in royal palaces, and they would quietly go, into a private life. But there is a lot of PR spin the whole time. I mean, this is meant to make us feel sympathetic towards Eugenie, the fact that she's, having another child and she's just a normal sort of housewife. And I think there's so much more going on behind the scenes than people realize with the daughters, particularly the schizophrenic approach to the royal family. Are they in or are they out? Are they going
Yeah.
to Ascot? Are they going to Windsor? Are they doing royal duties? Um, it's very weird. There's very, very mixed signals coming out.
Does King Charles realize how weak it makes him look and how unfair it is to force this inheritance on William of what do I do with these people? And also, correct me if I'm wrong, it's my understanding that Prince William's team offered to audit the girls so that they could say they're in the clear. This story is a nothing burger. And the girls rejected that offer.
That's my understanding. Yes, I mean that would have been a very easy way out, and that of course does raise all sorts of red flags.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ugh.
So
And I
it's
mean, do you think that the king just worried? Maybe he just really does have this soft heart that am oblivious to because I grew up in the Diana era where he was like, I prefer my mistress. But maybe he really does have a soft heart for these girls. I guess. But when you are in a leadership position, you have to make tough choices, and it feels like this guy is not making any tough choices.
no, I agree. I mean, and the irony is becomes popular when he's ruthless.
Yeah.
There's a lot of support when he was a bit tougher at the end of October. He should never have allowed Andrew to make the statement he did at the beginning of October. I mean, he is, in some ways, he's called Charles the Ditherer. I mean, he's in some ways, he is a compassionate man, but I think he feels he gave an undertaking to the mother he would take care of Andrew. I think there probably was some deal to get Andrew at a Royal Lodge, but the girls would be taken care of, and he doesn't want to go back on that deal. He may be worried about the secrets that both Fergie and Andrew have that they perhaps threatened they would reveal if he's
Hmm.
treated too harshly. I mean, this is all speculation.
Yeah, I agree though. I know I have a limited amount of time with you. Harry threatened to sue you. That went really far. Have you heard any have you heard
Well, I
from
didn't
our friend
hear
Prince
from
Harry
him.
lately?
You just went to, well, you have all the time in the world. I have all the time in the world for you. But
Thank you.
yeah, he just got in touch with Newsweek. I didn't hear anything about it. And I've
Oh,
heard
that's interesting. So he just calls his friend, his media, the evil media. That we hate the media. They killed his mom, not the lack of seatbelt or the drunk driver. He contacts the evil media to threaten you. Does not even actually pursue said threat. Is that what happened?
yes, I didn't heard nothing from him. I've seen nothing from him, and as you say, nothing happened. I mean, the publishers did take out a line just to sort of because they didn't
Appease
want
him.
hassle. Didn't want the hassle. They said it. Look, this is a side issue. I'd actually, funny enough, they'd asked me to ask my source what was the relationship like between Andrew and Harry, and so I asked the source, and and we put the line in. It wasn't there to start with,
Mm.
but yeah, I mean, actually, I have to thank him because that gave the book a real kickstart of publicity, which it might not have had otherwise. So, you know, he didn't sort of think that one through, and he came out of it quite well, defending the honor of his wife.
Yeah.
Um, but we know he's got a short temper. He kind of does throw his fists out. I mean, supposedly had a fight with his brother, and we know that Andrew.
Paparazzi back in the day.
And paparazzi coming out of nightclubs, exactly. And we know that Andrew is also someone who can resort to his fists if necessary. So it doesn't seem such an unlikely story when again one looks at it.
I mean, the hypocrisy when it comes to the Sussexes is just never ending. That he would contact the media directly instead of contacting you privately. If that was a real concern of Harry's, I think his team could have taken the 15-minute break to Google how to get a hold of you versus calling Newsweek. That to me says everything I need to know. He just wanted the headlines denying it. He's not actually concerned about your book.
No, I don't think he was concerned about the book, and actually, no one would have noticed it. It wouldn't have been covered, I suspect. It would have just passed on. Some, people would have read it and just thought, well, that's that. So yeah, he drew attention to something that he needn't have done. It's the
So
same
funny.
with President Trump. He did the same thing with the line that we took out there about Melania.
Yeah.
Again, I think everyone would have. I mean, it's not a new allegation that was made. And yet all he did was draw attention to it in the way that, when she made a statement the other day, she drew attention to Epstein when everyone had forgotten about her connections with Epstein.
Yeah, that was I did say I don't want to talk about this on TV because I have no idea why we're doing this. I can't explain this away. Um, is Andrew a unique case, or is he simply the most exposed example of a broader royal culture? And I ask that in direct relation to Prince Harry because I find the two very similar.
Yes, they are very similar. And I mean, in some ways, they were both tamed by the discipline of the armed services, but the same things that, weak men with much stronger wives, and a strong sense of entitlement, not too bright. So yeah, no, I think there are. That's the problem. There are these rogue royals, and it's a sort of trope of the crown, between that division between public duty and private pleasure or profit. And the woes like Harry and Andrew and Duke of Windsor and Princess Margaret, who fall into one category, and then others who fall into the other one. And so yeah, no, I think my what I realized doing the book is that actually it's sort of endemic corruption in the institution. It's not just two bad apples. These people are protected, the stories are suppressed. There's a very symbiotic relationship often with particularly the royal rota in terms again of access, patronage, pressure, and it's something is rotten in the state of Denmark, as Hamlet might have said.
I mean, but I do want to believe that Prince William and Catherine, I mean, that there is good, that there is good. And there, I mean, I saw it with King Charles in DC. The monarchy has real value and is important. And um,
I agree.
can you agree with that? Or
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think, the soft power of the monarchy is very impressive. It brings the nation together at times of national tragedy or whatever. And most of the royals do a fantastic job and work very hard, but they're undermined by a few of these ones who've got their noses in the trough. And if they have proper accountability and transparency, then these things aren't likely to happen. And if they've got nothing to hide, then they have nothing to fear. So it is sad that they're not addressing it. But I agree. I mean, Catherine is the savior of the royal family. I mean, she is a class act. as Charles was when he came to Washington. And, all those things are kind of, again, undermined because of attention being focused on people like Harry and Andrew, when, there is so much good that they can do, but which gets ignored. So, my experience is, talking to people, they're not anti-monarchy, but they are anti the monarchy abusing its status in order to make money for itself.
That's very interesting. Is the solution, do we think that they don't hold these people accountable because guilt by association? Um, is the solution that you strip titles? Harry and Meghan's need to go. When somebody shows that they're not going to play ball, do you need to cut them off at the knees immediately?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think, as you say, when Charles is ruthless, he's more popular. And I think most people feel that there's a lot of flummery around. We should be getting rid of all these titles unless they're in the direct line of succession. They shouldn't be getting all the trappings of royalty without doing any of the work. So get them out of subsidized accommodation in palaces. And, okay, there may still be celebrities and they may be invited to do things. But, again, if we had a proper royal register where they had to register the business activities, I think there would be less likelihood of people turning up to promote banks in Saudi Arabia and various things.
Yeah.
So, it just needs proper transparency. And I think that would solve a lot of the problems because people then wouldn't do what they're doing. But at the moment, they know that they can do everything and that it'll all be covered up.
Agree. Oh my gosh. Well, do you agree with us? Disagree with us? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Subscribe to Andrew on Substack. Listen to his podcast, but also in fascinating new information in the paperback edition of entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York. Your podcast is linked to your Substack. Is that an easy way to
Yes,
find
it
you?
is. Absolutely. Yes, they
Okay.
can.
Okay,
So
perfect. Well, everybody go subscribe and tune in to Andrew's podcast as well. We're so lucky that he spent some time on ours, and we'll see you again very soon. And I'll see you in real life very soon, Andrew. I can't
I'm
wait.
looking forward to it very much and always happy to appear. Or you're always lovely to chat to.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.